Hi folks, today I just want to talk about the controversy surrounding the PC release of Shin Megami Tensei III Nocturne, and the idea of holding a video game hostage. That's one harsh way of putting it, but it's a simple idea really. The developer/publisher wants to release, or plans to release, their biggest, newest game, but it's going to be on an unfamiliar platform to them. Imagine trying to put a JRPG on the Xbox One, ported from the PlayStation 4. There might be some market there, and there have been exclusive JRPGs even on the Xbox platform before, but the vast majority of people who play JRPGs on console are buying a PlayStation system for that. No one buys an Xbox to play RPGs. So it creates a situation where the developer and/or publisher wants to dip their toes into a new platform, but they aren't sure if this brand new game they are porting would sell well enough to cover the time spent getting the game to work on the platform. Doesn't even have to be a demographics issue, like not enough JRPG players playing on the Xbox in this case. It could also be inexperience with the platform, which would require even more time if it's done by the inexperienced developers, and this could be a total disaster. See the Dark Souls PC launch, which we'll talk about in a bit. You could also hire another company that has experience with the new platform, but something might get lost in translation as you have to train an entire group or division of people to understand your game's code in order to port it over. And this is all with a game that might take months to port over, a huge game. That's a lot of man hours and a lot of money. So what tends to happen with somewhat gun-shy companies is that they port a smaller game or an older game that wouldn't be too hard to port in the first place. After this older game, this easier game releases on that platform, the company would take a deep look at its sales generated and then decide if it's worth it to port the bigger game. So in the case of the Xbox, they would port a smaller RPG first and see how many sales they would get, and they would be like, well, this sold pretty well and it was an RPG, so maybe we can port our bigger, more expensive RPG over now, since this one did do pretty well. In this case, and the subject of what we're talking about today, it's developer/publisher Atlus and publisher Sega releasing Shin Megami Tensei III Nocturne for the PC. A nearly 20-year-old game that has been remastered in HD from its original PS2 counterpart. SMT III Nocturne is a game loved by many, but many are believing this is the small game, in a manner of speaking. The real big game that this game is allegedly testing the waters for is Persona 5. Persona 5 is a game that was released exclusively on the PlayStation 3 and 4, with a follow-up enhanced edition called Persona 5 Royal, released only on PlayStation 4. PC players have been begging for this title to come to their preferred platform for years now, despite the fact that PS3 emulation on PC is pretty good, but Royal's exclusive content still eludes the platform. With Persona 4 Golden, the first title to come to PC, selling very well on PC last year, it was only natural to expect some kind of announcement, at the very least, for Persona 5. After all, we got the smaller game, it sold well, time for the bigger one, right? We want the Persona 5 announcement. Instead, we got this game. SMT III Nocturne HD Remastered was released last year in Japan, and now we're given the option to pre-order it for PC. For $49.99. $50 US. Again, this is a 20-year-old game. In addition to fetching the high price tag for it, Atlus and Sega will also be stripping out the Dante character content that was featured in the original game, reselling the content as a separate piece of paid DLC. Again, a 20-year-old game will have content stripped out of it and repackaged as DLC. The game also utilizes de novo DRM, requiring an online authentication every now and then to continue playing. There's a lot of controversy surrounding de novo, and the question of video game preservation comes up often. If those authentication servers go down, aren't we left with a ton of games that simply won't work without modding them? For a 20-year-old game, having that kind of DRM on it is a bit contemptuous on the part of Atlus and Sega, to say the least. In addition to having that wonderful feature, you can also drop $70 US to get all the DLC and play the game a few days earlier as a bonus. I'm pretty sure some of that DLC is going to be free though, Mysteriously, they haven't priced any of the DLC out on the store page yet, so one might assume they're trying to push this digital deluxe edition in a way to make you think you're getting a better deal with all that DLC added to it. Like, oh, look at all that text, that's a lot of stuff you're getting. When in reality, I expect at least the merciful difficulty option, DLC, to be completely free. At least that's what I've read from some press material. It should be free. Then again, it wouldn't be the first game to sell a difficulty option as DLC. As for the remaster itself, its feature list is pretty bare bones. Remastered 3D models and backgrounds? Okay, the original always looked fine to me despite being an early PS2 title. It looks great on an emulator, of which you can play this $50 game perfectly fine on. By the way, the footage you're seeing here is from an emulator. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? Widescreen, 1440p, 60 FPS. Looks totally fine, and it's not $50. Additional difficulty settings, you know, that's always nice to have for older RPGs with some annoying difficulty spikes. Suspend save your progress whenever you need to. Well, I guess that is convenient. Voiced audio, choose between Japanese and English. Always nice to have. Steam achievements and trading cards. As far as new features go, though, this seems extremely bare bones. Think about it, the game looks like just a simple upscale with some new models, but the asking price resembles a brand new game. Hell, the Ninja Gaiden trilogy is supposedly going to have a similar feature set, and that's 3 entire games, and it will be cheaper than this one game. To be fair, I'm not saying the remaster is effortless all around, it's just a very, very poor value, especially compared to other remasters that are coming out or have been released already, even by Sega. I've heard claims that the game has been remade on a brand new engine, so a ton of extra work was probably put in under the hood to future-proof the game. It kind of explains the price hike, but it's weird, don't you think, to put that much effort into a remaster and overprice it that much when the SMT series, which has now pretty much become a sub-series to the better-selling Persona games, is now considered quite niche. If you're worried about a game not selling well, why would you put this much effort into it and price it at this much to make up the development costs? The last thing you should do is charge an outrageous price for a limited feature set when most people using an anemic computer can play the game on a PS2 emulator. In fact, they've been doing that for the last decade. Why on earth would the average consumer drop that much money, $50, on something that has been perfectly playable on an emulator for free, or played just fine on a used PS2? And the answer as to why someone more dedicated to the franchise would buy it at that price is quite simple. Nocturne supposedly needs to sell well to get Persona 5 Royal, or at the very least, the vanilla version of Persona 5 on PC. The Persona franchise has been a much requested series that PC players have been asking Atlus and Sega to bring to the platform for almost a decade now. And not just the RPGs, the rhythm games, the fighting games, and more recently the Musou-themed title Persona 5 Strikers. We actually got Strikers on PC though, and before that, as I've already mentioned, we've gotten Persona 4 Golden too. But here's the point I want to make. Atlus and Sega are trying to convince you to buy their overpriced port so they can continue to dangle Persona 5 on PC in your face. It's genius, really. Companies can just hold games hostage for ransom and people will buy an inferior or overpriced product out of fear that they won't get the newer, popular game. Think about it. Why else would they have the gall to charge $50 for a spit and polish of a nearly 20-year-old game that most people have played contently on an emulator for almost a decade now? They haven't even so much as told people that they will port Persona 5 to PC if the game sells well. There is no news on that regarding Persona 5 coming to PC, yet we've already assumed it. You can check the Steam forums and that's what everyone's talking about. Oh, we gotta buy this game, and we have to do it because we need to get Persona 5 on PC. They need to know that we're gonna buy these JRPGs. We have to prove to Atlus and Sega that they'll sell well. What makes you think that they don't have Persona 5 ready to launch right after this, and they know that it's going to sell well anyway? It's called marketing. They know they can get more copies of this game sold, SMT III Nocturne, at exorbitant prices to convince people that it will solve a problem that might not even be there to begin with. There was a time when petitions and loud voices were all you needed to get games ported to different platforms. Indeed, Dark Souls was a title that the developers themselves said they would bring to PC if people were vocal about it. They didn't have customers buying another game at near full price on PC to prove that there was demand. And the developers weren't experts with the platform either. They let on the fact that if Dark Souls did come to PC, it wouldn't be a very good port, as the developers were inexperienced with the platform. And that was true. Dark Souls launched with Games for Windows Live, a god-awful DRM service that was patched out later. It was also locked to 30 frames per second with resolution limits in-game, poor mouse and keyboard controls, and even mixed controller support, as well as numerous other issues. There was a mod to fix most of these problems, including the locked frame rate, but it would severely screw with the physics. It was an imperfect, unfixable port. Despite all these problems, we did get the game. We didn't have to buy another title from Namco. We didn't have to bend over backwards, begging and filling out hundreds of surveys to get it. It was just one vocal push. Yeah, the port wasn't great. It was terrible in many regards, but many people knew that going in, and the mod fixed most of the problems anyway. And the remastered version that came later, while it was more of a cash grab, at least it fixed the bare basic issues that the original had out of the box. And since then, From Software and Namco have done quite well on PC with the Souls series. From Software's newer titles have been getting plentiful support, and they keep getting better and better in terms of utilizing the platform. I mean, yeah, Dark Souls 2 and 3 had their issues, but the issues would get fixed, and the games received a lot of extra post-launch support. And it's important to remember, Dark Souls was ported by a company with limited experience in the PC market. It was a niche game to begin with that had a strong following. Persona 5 is hardly what I consider niche. It's a game with high production values, a marketing budget outside of just word of mouth, and it's one of the best-selling first-party RPGs on the PS4. Atlus has had games on PC for a while now, and Sega definitely has the cash to bankroll their bigger titles. We even got a Persona game on PC. Persona 4 Golden was released on PC for only $20. It was an enhanced port, an actual remaster one might say, that was on the Vita and no other device, but it came to PC before coming to PS4 and Switch, and it's not even on those platforms yet. Those are two potentially stronger platforms for the title, yet they released it on PC anyway, and that's amazing that we got something like that, and it shows that Sega and Atlus did have some confidence in the platform. They then followed it up with Persona 5 Strikers, a game that is heavily story-based and a sequel to Persona 5, and yet reception was fairly positive on PC, because even though it was full price and people that didn't play 5 were potentially spoiling themselves, it was still a good enough port, and we got it at the same time as the console versions did. We didn't get anything gimped here. But then we get games like SMT III Nocturne HD, coming into the party, 20 years late, drunk, and asking you to pay for his parking. I can almost guarantee you Atlus and Sega have Persona 5 planned and ready to release very soon, but they don't say anything because they want to milk as much money out of this opportunity as possible by releasing bare-bones remasters for nearly full price, in the hopes that people will buy it or buy an extra copy, because they're preying on that fear that consumers will think they will never get Persona 5 if they don't buy this remaster. And all for what? The upcoming port of Persona 5 could be horrendous, for all we know, and we're just encouraging it by buying this release. If SMT 3 is asking for $50, what's stopping Persona 5 from being full price too? If we're willing to pay $50 for a bare-bones release, then why should Sega and Atlus care about doing justice to Persona 5 as well? What about Persona 5 coming out on Steam with almost no PC options, a 30 FPS lock, no borderless windowed mode, bugs out the ass, no options beyond 1080p resolution, de novo DRM? What about not even releasing the Royal version? What if they just gave us the PS3 version? What's stopping them from doing that? Nothing. Nothing if we don't make Sega and Atlus a little afraid themselves. Consumers have all the power. Vote with your wallet. Do not be intimidated by this obvious cash grab. I know some of you like SMT Nocturne a lot and want to play it again, and if it's for that reason, I understand. If you think that's worth $50, go for it. But for the rest of you, I'm asking, please don't. Don't buy it if you just want Persona 5 on PC, the possibility of Persona 5 on PC. You'll be doing exactly what Atlus and Sega want you to do. Giving into your fear and giving them your money. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. I'm out.